Welcome to the 2020 Hooked on Family Engagement webinar. We are very pleased that you are joining us for an exciting webinar to enhance and increase family engagement. This is Family Engagement Month, the month of November, and what better way to celebrate the partnership between home, school, and community by attending this exciting session. The webinar is organized by the Alliance for Family Engagement. The Alliance for Family Engagement is comprised of 15 school districts in Region 4 of Florida. We meet the first Friday of every month, currently on Zoom. We are a diverse group of educators, Title I teachers, specialists, administrators, district family engagement coordinators, community partners, and volunteer coordinators that come together as a team to share best practices and not to reinvent the wheel, with a focus of enhancing student achievement and supporting collaborative relationships between families, schools, and the community. If you're interested in joining our Zoom meetings, let us know in the survey you will receive at the end of the session. Before we get started with the presentation, we would like to remind you that this session will be recorded, and we are requesting that you keep your videos turned off. I would like to introduce Benita Hampton. She is the Director of Family and Community Engagement for the State of Florida Department of Education. Benita.
Good afternoon. I am honored to bring greetings on behalf of the Bureau of Family and Community Outreach in the Florida Department of Education. As we all know, family engagement is an essential strategy for student success. During this time, schools across the country are joining forces with families and partners to support learning as never before. Today, we leverage the Hooked on Family Engagement Conference as an opportunity to explore and share practices for promoting and increasing family engagement in these unprecedented times. I am excited to learn about these innovative strategies as we continue to build systems with their families and educators to support all students, whether learning in person, online, or hybrid. Thank you for leading with courage and for being there for our students and families. I am truly inspired by your passion for this important work and your commitment to ensuring that Florida students are ready for college, career, and life. Thank you again for the invitation and the opportunity to participate. At this time, I'd like to introduce Renee Wiley of Charlotte County.
Renee, you have to unmute yourself.
My apologies, everyone. It is my honor to introduce Jenni Brasington. She is the National Director of Family Engagement for Scholastic Education and a founding partner of the Center for Active Family Engagement, CAFE. She has more than 25 years of experience working with pre-K to 12 schools as an administrator, early childhood coordinator, and school counselor to improve student achievement and build effective family-school partnerships. She most recently served as the Director of Family and Community Engagement for the Acelero Learning, a large Head Start grantee with delegate agencies for 4 states. Ms. Brasington holds a Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education and a Master's of Education degree in School Counseling. She has focused her work over the last 20 years on assisting educators in the U.S. and Australia to engage with families in ways that support learning and increase student outcomes. She is the author of Family Friendly Walkthrough and the co-author of Family Engagement Assessment, a tool that measures a school's capacity for developing effective partnerships with families. Please allow me to turn today's presentation of Harnessing the Power of Families to Support Student Learning and Development to Jenni Brasington.
Thank you so much, Renee. It's a pleasure to be here. And I was honored to be asked to deliver the keynote. I was in person last year, and any opportunity to engage with all of you is a sheer delight. So just a little bit more about me in terms of what Renee said. I know I've engaged with several of you, but as Renee shared, I've been doing this work. It seems hard to believe that it's hard to believe that it's been over 20 years since I've been doing this work, but I've been honored to work with schools and districts across the country. And as much as I hope you are able to take away from this presentation, I really do learn from all of you. I feel like I've been mentored in this work by Dr. Karen Mapp, and so lots of what you'll hear comes from the work that she has done and others in this field. So please add your comments and questions in the chat, and I will have my contact information at the end of the presentation so that you can stay in touch with me. So I put this slide up here. So I have, well, up until the pandemic, I was spending most of my time on planes and hotel rooms, but I consider myself a Phoenician because I've been in Arizona now for about 25 years, but my husband recently retired about 3 years ago, and both he and I are from the East Coast. And when he retired at the very young age of like 53, and I don't recommend that for anyone because seriously, he needs to go back to work. But that's a whole nother story we can talk about on another day. He decided that he wanted to be in Florida so that he could fish all the time. So I spent a little bit of time down there, but now I'm finding I'm spending even more and more time down there. So I'm splitting my time between Florida and Arizona. And I recently bought a car. So now I feel like a true Floridian because I have like my license plate. And for those of you that want, I'm in Port Charlotte, so right where Renee is. And so feel free to drop me a line. I'll be heading down to Florida in about 2 weeks and staying through January. So I feel like I'm becoming a Floridian now, although I really do feel like my hair does way better in Arizona than Florida. Okay, so here's what I want to spend time talking about today, and I only have an hour, and so I could really spend all day talking about building strong homeschool partnerships. So I had to narrow the focus a little. But again, you could certainly reach out and we could spend more time talking about this. But for today's presentation, I'm going to spend a good chunk of time talking about building relationships and why that's so critical and how to actually go about doing it, both in person and virtual. We'll talk a little bit about what that means to engage families virtually because we're all doing it. And I know people say, yeah, it's just so hard and it's different. But I do believe you can build relationships with families, with colleagues virtually. You just have to think about it a little different. And then we'll spend the last part of the presentation talking about family engagement as an instructional strategy and some ideas and practices that you can begin to implement right away. So before I get into anything further in my presentation, I have 2 poll questions that I would like you to take. So Sheila is going to launch the poll. I love when things work out perfectly. Awesome. So we'll leave this up for a minute. And we're not going to review these right away. I'm going to go through a bit of my content, but we'll come back to these. And then we come back to them, phlegm, 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 phlegm.
I believe we are having some technical difficulties.
I don't know if it's Jenny.
It may be.
I think it is Jenny, so hopefully she'll jump back on and post her presentation. I'm sorry, everyone. Please be patient. You might want to stop recording, and then we'll put the recording back on if you want to pause it.
And I'll put my video back on. So I'm back, everyone. I apologize. I'm not sure what happened, but clearly I was the only one that Zoom seemed to just shut down. So these are the things that happen. So we're just going to pick right back up, and maybe Sheila, eventually you can tell us about the poll results later on, but I'm a little worried about sharing the poll because I don't want it to like kick me off again.
Sure.
So let's spend a little bit of time talking about why relationships are so important. And now, as I was putting this presentation together, I was thinking about not only homeschool partnerships in terms of our relationship with families, but I was thinking about my relationship with my colleagues, my husband, and even relationships that I established with the woman that cuts my hair or does my nails, and how if I have to change those, I'm like, that is a problem for me. Or like, I'll say I need to fly home to get my hair cut. So the importance of establishing trust with somebody and feeling like somebody who gets you and understands you. So we're going to talk about why this is so critical in terms of the work we're doing in our schools. So why does this matter? I think it's important to note that no meaningful relationship, and we're talking about like our homeschool partnerships, can be established. And when we're talking about those homeschool partnerships around like instruction, like, or when we invite families to attend an event, but none of that can happen until the relationships of trust and respect are established. And so we take time to do that. And oftentimes when I'm presenting, or even in presentations that I've been in with Dr. Mapp, we undoubtedly will have folks will say, you know, I do all these workshops, I have this parent university, but yet no one ever comes. And so the question becomes, well, what have you done prior to that to set a tone that families feel like this is a good place, that we trust you, that you value us, right? So that's the foundation for getting to that next step. And it's almost like you can't get to that next step, those workshops, or, you know, a cohort with a family, or that even that instructional piece, if you haven't built the foundational level. I don't know how many of you like work out, but like I aspire to, you know, run a marathon, but I also don't put in the time sometimes to actually train and practice to get to that. Well, I'm probably never going to get to that level unless I put in the work up front. And that's the same thing with building relationships of trust and respect. We all want to get to the point that families partner with us on instructional, or even in like social and emotional, or all the other things that we want families to partner with us on. But if we don't spend the time up front on those relationships, it's really hard to get to that end goal. It's also important to remember that school is not a good place for everyone. And so sometimes our families, you know, come in with baggage, whether it's, you know, from, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago, they may have moved into another district. And so they may mistrust the school. There could be negative past experiences or feelings. And so we have to help them overcome that. And work with them to see that this is a good place, that you can trust us. And sometimes that takes more time with certain families than others. And remember, there's not a one size fits all for family engagement. So what works, you know, for 3 families, for 1 family may not work for every family. And so you have to, it's just a lot of trying things out and finding that just the right strategy or practice that'll work for this family. It's like the right practice for this family. And again, I talked about this, but this relationship piece is really, it's the foundation. I don't know what happened. What is that red all over? The relationship building is the foundation for future work that we do with families. It's the foundation for that shared learning, that shared partnership, and shared ownership for becoming partners around the instructional pieces. And I think in the end, when you trust somebody, when you have a relationship with them, they are way more willing to learn from others who they respect and trust. And again, if you think about relationships in your own life, all these things I think are true. And especially, we are way more willing to learn. We're way more receptive to feedback. We're way more receptive to engage and collaborate with folks that we trust, with folks that we value their input, and we know that they value our input and that they honor what we bring to the table. And so I know many of you probably are like, yeah, I know this, Jenny, and that's good. But it's always a good reminder. And as I talk a little bit about later on in the presentation about prioritizing this work in your district, I want you to remember these things. So now you're probably thinking, all right, so how do I actually do this? Or how do I elevate my practice? So here are some things to think about in terms of building trusting relationships. So the first one is to always focus on family strengths and the positive. And if you go back to, or if you think about the dual capacity framework and those process conditions, it's really that all families have something to bring to the table. So we see all families for their assets and for their strengths, and not from a deficit model. And we convey that in a variety of ways, but we honor families' funds of knowledge every single day through every single interaction. Families know that we value what they bring to the table. Not after they come to a workshop or after they learn something from us. Today, we value them. When they come through our doors, we focus on where families are at right now and the strengths that they bring to us. I like to call them our gifts. And if you've never done an activity where you think about all the gifts that families bring to us, and really challenge yourself to think out of the box, because all families have gifts. All of us do, that they bring to our relationships, and those should be celebrated. Number two, truly listen to families. For those of us who like to chat and talk, we have to be able to sit back and just truly listen. We don't have to control this space all the time. We can give that to others and just be a really good listener to somebody else. But we have to be open to hear things that maybe families don't say all the time. But we have to be open, and we have to give the time and the space to be able to do that. So conversations aren't rushed, that we give families the time that they need to share information with us. And maybe they don't. I mean, it's not always that we have to problem solve or give them a suggestion or a service. We're just there to just listen. You know, it sounds like you had a really rough day. I'm so glad you came to talk to me. I didn't have to give them a strategy or a solution. I was just there as a listening ear. And sometimes that's all each of us need. The third is we actively welcome families. And I think especially in our new virtual world, I think we have to think about how do we welcome families in person and how do we welcome families virtually. And I have some tips and strategies for you, but every single time families walk into our buildings or come into a Zoom meeting or a family engagement event, whether it's in person or through Zoom, they should feel like they should be there. They should feel like they have something to contribute. So we want to make sure that we actively engage our families and welcome them into this space and value them for what they bring to that session or that meeting. And the last one is that we demonstrate that we care about them. We care about them as people and as individuals. And especially during this time, it's not always just about, Johnny's homework or, that assignment or, their computer or their work or something like that. It's just, how are you doing? It's just engaging with people on just, a human level. How are things? Are you okay? Is your family healthy? Just so that they know you care. Okay, let's see, let's go on here. How do we continue to build trusting? Okay, so more on building trust. Take family concerns seriously. Even if it's like the 5th time, the 6th time, the 7th time that family has come to you, each and every time is important to them. And we have to be, let them know that we do take their concerns seriously. Now, we may change how we respond to them and empower them. And so, maybe the first couple times we listen and then we are modeling for them and empowering them to maybe take ownership of the situation, but we don't minimize or say, this is the 3rd time you've come to us with this. Don't you have it by now? I mean, we're open, and we're open to them when they come to us with their concerns. We need to let families know what's important, especially in this partnership, what's permissible and what's necessary. And oftentimes families don't often know that they have a role to play, that we want their input, that feedback is permissible, that you're invited to a meeting, we want to hear from you. And so sometimes just letting folks, your families know that is important. And I think the last one is so important, is that there needs to be high expectations for family school partnerships. And that needs to be communicated out to families as often as possible. And when we say, high expectations is, what is our role and what is your role? And when we come together, what are the things that we do together to ensure that, Johnny is successful? And I know that I'm gonna, do X, Y, and Z, and you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and we're gonna help each other and work together to ensure that Melissa is successful. So another way we build strong partnerships and strong relationships is how we talk about this work. And I'm not going to read over each of these little boxes, but it's important that we start to use a partnership vocabulary. So we stay away from words like, you need to do this, I'm going to do this. It's, we will work together. Our goals for the year. Because that signifies a partnership. We are all in this together. How can we partner around this? And I will make sure that at the end of the presentation, I know you'll have the recording, but I will also send a PDF of the presentation so that you can see some of these. But I think it's important, if you say, family engagement is important, we believe in partnership, that your words also convey that. And then the other piece is just, doing a little self-reflection to know whether or not you are practicing and putting some of these practices in place, especially around relational trust. So when it comes to relational trust, there are 4 elements. So the first one is respect, competence, integrity, and personal regard. And so really thinking about, do I actually do these things on a regular basis? And if not, what can you do differently to ensure that you can put some of these in place? So the first one is the respect. Do I actually seek input and really listen carefully to what families have to say? And I would go one step further in this respect. So I think we can ask families, for their input, But I think it goes even further than that. But also, if we ask families for their input, then I think we have a responsibility to share back out with them what we do with the information that we ask them for. So if we've asked them for feedback, or if we ask them for them to comment on a survey about, whether it's uniforms or I don't know, adopting a new curriculum, and they took part in that, then I think the responsibility is that we then follow up with families to let them know what's been decided. And the other piece of that is, only ask for feedback from families on the things that you really do want the feedback on and that you haven't already decided, because nothing is worse for families than to hear in the grapevine that that's already been decided, because that then feels like you don't really take my input really seriously, and it feels like you're just doing it to check a box off. Competence, do I really demonstrate to families that I am competent, but that also that I believe they are equally as competent? So letting families know that you've got this. Can you, maybe you tell me a little bit about what you're doing at home, because I know you're doing some incredible things to support Johnny to be successful. Can you share that with me? He's told me some things that you work on over the weekends, and what you do when you're in the car together. I would love to hear that. Could you maybe share that with some of the other families? Integrity, do I always keep my word? That has a lot to do with that follow up and follow through. If you say to families that you're going to get them something, or that you're going to respond back in 2 days, then we should be getting back to families. And even if it's not with all of the information, just to follow up and say, I haven't forgotten this. I just need a little bit more time. Families will respond to that. But when we just leave them hanging with some empty promises, that breaks the trust, right? And again, I mean, this isn't just for families. Think about, places that you frequent, or service providers, when they say they're going to get back to you in 3 days, or you've hired a contractor and they don't follow through. So I don't think any of this is any different than what we've experienced. It's just putting it into practice with our families. And then the last one is that personal regard. And do I really show families that I care about them as people versus objects? So it's not just a checkbox, but I really do care about what you're going through. I don't just dive into a meeting and get started, but I take some time just to check and see, how are you doing? I know last time we spoke, you told me that your husband was ill. And so I'm just checking, is he doing better? Because again, that shows that this is about us caring about each other, and that this isn't just about the meeting that you've come to sign off on Johnny's IEP. But I really want to get to know you as an individual and as a person. So let's go through some virtual engagement strategies, because that's a lot of what we're doing right now. So as much as possible, always greet participants by name. And if you, we modeled some of this for you today during this presentation. Like, I think your co-hosts and the folks that put this session on did such a great job of welcoming people. As I was watching the chat and people commenting, it was so nice when the shout outs for where you were from, and that just helps people feel comfortable and feel like, even though there's a ton of people on this session, it feels like it's a really small and intimate group. Use time before the session, to engage participants, whether it's a question. I'm not sure I'm going to say poll anymore, because that sort of just like blew up my whole computer, but maybe play some music that folks can, jam to before the session. Maybe put up some drawings, or open the annotation and let folks, annotate some things, some brain teasers. I've used word clouds. I did a session right before Halloween, and I had people guess the amount of candy that I had in the jar, and then I mailed the jar to the winning recipient. So again, anything to make people feel like they're part of or in person with you. Choose activities where you can see and hear the voice of the group. So again, engage the group as much as possible, or engage families so that you get a chance to hear their voice as much as possible, whether it's in a breakout room or even just through the chat. So there's an opportunities for not only families to connect just to you, but even more importantly, that they can connect with each other. Share relevant personal stories. It's a way for us to connect to each other quickly, right? Whether it's a story that I told about, having now a car in Florida, or, that I live between Arizona and Florida, but any chance that you can to help folks make a personal connection to you helps us to build relationships much, much quicker. Show participants your world. So I oftentimes, I'm downstairs in my house, but when I'm upstairs, you can see pictures of my family, the quotes that I like, and it just gives folks an insight into me. But I encourage that when I'm on with districts and even with families. It's an opportunity for us to see into each other's world, and take me on a little tour of your home, and what you would showcase. And I think it's okay, especially when you're trying to build a relationship with somebody virtually, is to be vulnerable. This is my first time on Zoom. And so if I make a mistake, just be gentle with me. I'm trying, just let folks know that this is new for you, or you may be uncomfortable, or I'm trying this out for the first time. I think, sometimes we're afraid to do that. And yet 99% of the time we can all relate to that experience. I think it makes us way more human. And so don't be afraid to do that. Share and show your imperfections. And I think certainly we've all been able to do that much during this, time that we've been home more and that we're doing more things virtually. Establishing trust virtually. Pay attention to your nonverbal communication. I had a principal once tell me, and I didn't realize I did this, and so you all can tell me if I do this, but he told me that I was like a champion eye roller. I'm like, huh? I'm like, I never realized that. And so from that point on, I had people watch what I do. My facial expressions give me away all the time. And so I have folks watch me and pay attention. So if I'm doing something that is either, not a good strategy, if I'm trying to build rapport or relationships, then I have folks observe me so that I can pay closer attention to that. Communicate with predictability, especially with our families. If there's a platform that you use, stick with that platform. If you always put your questions in the chat, or if you always share a PowerPoint, you want to do the same things over and over again so that your families get used to this new virtual world and they know what to expect. Oftentimes we're uncomfortable because we don't know what to expect. Rotate and share power. So let other folks, take the wheel. And share their screen or share a picture, or take part in the presentation, so that it's not so much expert and then families, but it's that we're coming together and learning together. And then weave into the presentation, and I'm not doing a very good job of this, today, but comments and feedback and questions from the chat to, again, make your families feel like they are part of the session. And then use phrases like, what's another right answer to that? So again, it doesn't feel so much like us telling, but we're learning together. And yes, and so that it's, again, all of us have really good ideas to share. So being really genuine in the virtual setting, so project positivity. So folks should be able to see your passion for this work. Just as much as they see it in person, they should be able to see it virtually. And if not, then you want to be able to, work on that. But your family should be able to see how much you care and how much you want to engage with them, even when you're facilitating virtually. Make your why and your intentions really clear at the beginning. Follow up and follow through again, and prepare for every single event like it's your first, because this may be the first time your families have come to this event. And so they need to see you at your very best. Even if you're tired or you're not feeling so great, they need to feel like this is the greatest event ever. And why haven't I been to one of these before? And I want to come back. And then the immediacy. So the immediacy, especially in the virtual world, is that you want people to feel like you're right in the room with them, which is a good thing for me because I use my hands all the time. So I love this, that I can continue to gesture when I'm talking, because supposedly it makes folks feel like we're right in the room together. Smile, make people feel like I'm not just this stiff board and I'm not just reading from a presentation. Use people's names as much as possible to, again, make them feel like we're right in the room together and there's not this computer screen that's sort of between us. Use we and us a lot, and then try to change your voice, that vocal variety, as much as possible. So I have a video that I want you to see. If you had a chance to see any of the videos or the webinars that Dr. Karen Mack did this summer in partnership with Scholastic, this is a clip from one of those. But I love this video because the teacher Annie shares about, she shares with Karen why developing relationships with families and partnerships is so critical, and what she does to do that. So I'm going to play.
Annie, as a teacher, I certainly want to give you an opportunity to talk about, and you know, we usually have a lot of teachers on the call to talk about, you know, why are you so committed to engaging with families, and what do you get out of it? You know, sometimes we hear teachers say, you know, oh, this is one more thing to put on my plate. Oh, you know, this is going to be too much, and I'm already doing all these things already. We get a lot of that sometimes as pushback, and I totally get it because teachers are doing a lot. But why is this important to you? What does it offer you as a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many reasons that family engagement is important to me. And the first one is that families are the experts on their child. And I'm committed to knowing my students deeply. I'm committed to sparking their curiosity and having them be intellectually engaged. And partnerships with families, I believe, really make that possible. Families are what give us insight into a child's passions, into their strengths, into their areas of growth, and into like the social and emotional health of that child. So to me, that's baseline. Another reason family engagement is so important to me is because there's so much expertise among the families. So in a normal school year, I try to get as many experts into the classroom as possible. And as a teacher of Black and Brown students, I think it's really like vital for us to widen this idea of who the teacher is and who the experts are. And we need more people of color in front of our students. We need more men in front of our students. I teach at the elementary level. And so at the beginning of every year, I take an inventory and I ask families, like, what can you come in and teach us this year? What can you share with us? And you know, with the assumption that we're going to go partially remote or fully remote this year, I actually think that there are more opportunities than ever to bring those experts and all the families into our classroom space, because it's kind of easier in some ways right now. And then Karen, you asked, like, what does it do for me? And there certainly is a personal component to it. One of the things that I love about working with young people is it is authentic. Kids are real. So they don't hide their joys, they don't hide their frustrations, they don't hide their anger. And I like that. I like being in a real kind of raw space every day. And it feeds me to have those kind of intense relationships with kids. And I like having those relationships with families too. It honestly, it feeds me as a human to be able to interact with adults that way. And I think that when students and teachers and parents are in partnership and interacting authentically, students feel that viscerally. And it provides emotional support for them, and it provides like spiritual support as well. And I think that when we do that, and when our students witness that, we're saying to our students, we've got you, we love you, and we're all on your team.
I hope you enjoyed that. And if you want to see more of that video and the rest of that webinar, we've put the link to this session and also all the other sessions that Dr. Mapp did in the chat. So this goes back to the question, the poll question that I asked in the beginning about how well does your district prioritize relationship building? And I'm not sure we want to actually share the poll at this point because things are going well right now. But when I think about prioritizing relationship building in our schools, these are the things I think about and would hope to see. And so as you answered that poll question, I want to just kind of, you can think about it and you can put it into the chat if you were on the same page as I was, and whether after kind of looking at this list, whether or not you'd go back and change your answer. So the first thing I thought of was that it really needs to be named as a priority at your school, or in the district actually, from the top all the way down, that we understand that this relationship building and building relational trust is a priority. And that means that we all practice that, so that there's relational trust being modeled from administrator to teacher, and teacher to teacher, and teacher to families. And we understand as a school and as a district what relational trust means and what it looks like. That we identify quality practices. So some of the things I talked about today, but we identify those in our buildings and we call it out again, we name it as a priority, and we identify the practices that we want to see in terms of building relational trust. So that if I am a principal in a building, and this is important to me, that these are the things that I want to see my staff do on a regular basis, and that I may come and actually observe for these things to see whether or not this is being implemented. I provide professional learning, so modeling and coaching and practice and feedback. Because while I may think that I'm building relationships, maybe in the way that I talk to a family, maybe when I'm doing the conferences, maybe I don't actually give families a chance to actually talk. Maybe I do all the talking. So being able to model and practice some of those strategies, really what is good relationship building? I was on a call with a district that I'm working with, and we were talking about the difference between one-way and two-way conversation, and they're recording in their notes, whether they're sending an email or whether they're having a conversation with the family. And a lot of them, they're marking conversation, but they're just sending an email. And so we were talking about the difference between like one-way and two-way, and the assistant principal said, I'm not sure I'm clear on that. So helping folks understand when we say, having a dialogue and two-way communication, and what's the difference between one-way and two-way, and inviting, letting families speak first. The next one, I am a huge, if you've ever seen me present, I'm a huge proponent of coaching. And just like we coach around instructional practices, I'm going to encourage folks to, if you're in a position, to coach on these kind of practices. So observe, and even if it's just colleague to colleague, but observe, your colleague, or if you're a principal or a supervisor, of somebody observing a conversation with a family or a presentation to see how well you're incorporating maybe the process conditions, or parent-teacher conferences. How well do you actually share the air? And is it actually a dialogue and a two-way conversation? Actually observe for those type of things. If you've called it out and identified these quality practices, how well do teachers and liaison and even administrators, how well do we actually practice these things? And then highlight and showcase quality practices. So when somebody does something well, highlight, showcase it, have folks make videos and vignettes so that we can refer back to these things. But that's what I think about in terms of prioritizing relationship building. So I'm going to stop for a minute and see if we have any questions.
Hi, Jenny, it's Abby. We do have a question here.
Okay.
It's from Clarice, and she is curious about some tips to get parents to attend or show up to virtual meetings. Seems like they're having some issues with maybe some Zoom fatigue, and they're trying to do some things like incentives, personalized invitations, asking for input on agendas, but are still having some struggles having parents show up.
Got it. So maybe instead of starting with a meeting, maybe just doing like a fun hour, whether it's called like a happy hour or a Zoom adult game night, or an afternoon, or even a morning, cup of coffee together, but just a time to get folks to socialize, and maybe offer those at a couple of different times. And so maybe get away from the idea of a meeting, but just a time to, share with each other and network. And maybe that would help, get folks to attend. The other thing I would say is take a look at how many meetings that families are actually, attending. And then potentially like prioritizing them. So do you need all of them, and which are the ones are the most important to have families attend? Because I can see where it would be, I get tired of the Zoom meetings. So figuring out what's really the priority for families, and then maybe just doing something that's just totally for fun for them, that would give them an opportunity just to connect with each other, and maybe doing them by grade level. And instead of like maybe whole school, making them smaller groups, either by classroom or by grade level.
So, hi, Jenny, this is Amy. I'm going to share that we had a response conversation from Debbie, and she said she finds the way a meeting is marketed has a lot to do with getting folks out. And do parents understand that they will have an opportunity to give input?
That's a great, yeah. So I think sometimes meeting, I try to stay away from like workshop session, meeting. I love just an opportunity just to get together and share ideas with folks. I want to learn from people. And so if you like state that, people tend to want to like share. Or if you know somebody in particular that has a really good idea, then you ask them, maybe they can co-host with you, and that they're part of, creating the session. Or I know that you said you asked for like input, but maybe they are part of creating the session, with you. So you're collaborating with families on developing the session and using some creative names. That often gets me. And if you have others, feel free to put them in the chat. Like I said, I learned from all of you. Oh, that's a good one, getting students involved. Yes, that's a great one. High school students are great.
Yes. So Jenny, we have a question about strategies when there's language barriers. What do you have recommendations for that?
I know that there are some folks that are using interpreters. I know that some of the platforms actually will translate. Some of the schools and districts I worked with are doing, separate sessions. I'm not sure that there is one specific right answer for that, but I do know several of the platforms do have the ability for like closed captioned and also some translation. And I have been on a few that have interpreters as well. So they did like interpreting like in the chat as opposed to having everyone, doing it. I mean, I haven't heard of many that are doing it, English and Spanish together. So I have seen them do translation through the chat. Oh, that's a good one. Family Speak Out, Family Talk. Yeah, I know there's some programs out there. Is that the program, Family Talk? Oh, Family Talk Special Ed.
Jenny, it looks like there's one more question here asking about advertising virtual events. Some students are face-to-face and some are launched, it says. I'm not exactly sure about the launched part.
So what is the question, or how to market when it's?
Yeah, how to advertise virtual events with families.
I would say to advertise anywhere that families would get your information. So through an email, through a chat, through your social media. I'm not sure that I'm answering the question, but I would say not just one way. So I would figure out what is the best way, or several ways that you can get your information out about your virtual event. So definitely like on your website, in your social media, through text messaging, individual phone calls. If you're conducting, any virtual home visits, then pass the information on that way. Out in the community, utilizing your community partners to share your information with families. I'm sure there are others. And so look at all those robocalls. Yeah. I would say any way that you typically reach or can communicate with families, that's the way to do it, because not every family will receive the information in the same way. So you want to make sure that you are providing, peach jar, yeah, that you provide your information in a variety of ways. Okay, good questions. Continue to put your questions in. Oh, Sarah.
All right. Should we address Sarah's question? How do you help leadership principles relationship building as a priority? That's an excellent question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you have to help them see where it fits in for them, and you have to bring them in from the beginning. And so one of the things that we've learned at Scholastic is that, we started our work with doing like our workshops, the Dr. Map series. And what we've learned is that this work really has to start with district leadership and with school level leadership, that they have to help define what we mean by family engagement and what we mean by building strong homeschool partnerships, because if they're not in it at the start, it is really challenging. We can deliver a workshop, but I think when we think about this work, we're really thinking about systemic change, and that takes a little bit more time, and it takes everybody to come on board in terms of what we mean by that. And I would also say it's not just, I think you have to bring everyone together. So that's integrating like all of the leaders. So family engagement touches a ton of different departments in your district. So bringing in human resources, right? So when you advertise a position for a teacher and an administrator, that there are certain questions that you're going to ask, because philosophically, this is what you believe about family engagement. And so you ask some questions, you do the activity with administrators around the core beliefs. I really do think it's professional learning for your administrators and getting them on the same page before you do any other work with schools. with teacher teams, because if administrators aren't on the same page you are, it's really difficult to drive the work. And we can have another conversation about that.
So,
Oh, you're absolutely welcome, but I have to go on. Otherwise, I'm not going to have enough time. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Sorry. Hopefully that you guys will give me some grace and let me do a couple more slides. Okay. So I want you to think about, so this is a study from, I have to move my chat so I can get the exact, it's Why Community Engagement Matters in School Turnaround, and I can send you the article, but there were some lessons that we learned from these 71 Title I schools. And what we learned was that math and reading improved when teachers did these three things. And I hope these make you smile because they directly relate to the work that we're talking about. So why doesn't it come up? Oh, that was what three things. Okay, so the three things were that one, we make a positive personal connection with every family. So that I think relates back to that relationship building, but that every family feels like they're an important part of this school, of ensuring that students are successful. And so that there's this, like this triangle, the school, the home, and the student, and we all three come together to ensure that students reach their full potential. The second is that teachers help families understand how well their child is performing. And we're going to talk about actually what that looks like. So being really clear with families, not language like they're almost there, they're getting there, but being very clear on grade level, below grade level, and above grade level, and why that matters. And then the last one is that teachers provided resources and taught families how to use them, which again goes directly back to the dual capacity framework around that interactive and collaborative, but really modeling for families and getting them to, working with them to practice and rehearse so that when they go home, they know what to do with their child, okay? So some ideas for the first one is those welcoming calls. Every family should get a call at the beginning of the year, at any point in the year, and really by anybody. And I know for those of you that are in high school and middle school, I know that you guys have like much larger caseloads than elementary, but what some of the schools and districts that I'm working with are doing is that they're breaking kids up, and so that everybody has like an advisor or an engagement type of mentor that makes these calls, that builds relationships with families, that mentors the student and the family, so that the family and the student has somebody that they're going to get that welcoming call from, that they're going to get that good news email and text from, and that you may even go one step further in this virtual world and do a virtual home visit. And I would say, even when we hopefully at some point go back to being in person, that we still continue these virtual home visits. You know, doing home visits is sometimes hard, just scheduling, but the virtual home visits make it a little easier to be able to schedule. So I hope we don't lose some of that. So again, every family, you should make it a point to make a positive connection with every family. The second one, that teachers help families understand how well their child is performing. I want you to think about the percentage of your students at or above grade level in reading at your school. Now, you don't have to put anything in the chat, but I want you to think about that. And then I want you to think about what percent of the parents believe their child is at or above grade level in reading. And the reason I ask this is that Learning Heroes has done some work around this. And what we find is that families believe their kids are performing at a much higher level than where their students are actually at. And I think this could be for a variety of reasons. One, I think this is extremely confusing to families in terms of looking at, those national tests that they take maybe once a year, and then their grades that they get from the school every quarter, because sometimes they're not the same. So how could my child be getting a B, but maybe he's not performing at grade level? And so that's confusing for families. The other reason why I think why there's this discrepancy is that I don't think we're often clear with families on where their child is performing. Again, if you go back to what I was talking about in the beginning about that professional learning, most of us have never had training, and we don't practice in terms of sharing this information with families. And this can be uncomfortable. It's much easier to tell a parent their child is doing really well and above grade level. It is much harder to be sitting with a 9th grade student and have to tell them that their child is performing at a 5th or 6th grade level, and so how do you have those conversations? And most of the time, families may be like, why was I never told this? But they will have this sense of urgency, like, let's work to, I want to help my child. What can I do? And so that next part after you share this information is, here's how we're going to work together. But we can't shy away from these conversations because families need to know where their children are at. Families also should be able to answer these 3 questions. If you're a parent, and I know many of you are on this webinar, I want you to think about whether you know the answers to these questions. So the first one is, what are the 3 important things that my child should know and be able to do in reading and math? And every parent should be able to answer this question. How well is my child doing on these 3 important things? And where can I find this information? And what am I doing at home to help my child? What are those strategies that I know how to do to support my child? And so we share this information with the districts that we work with. And I wanted to share, and again, I will share these with you. But these posters came from a district that we were working with in Utah. And if you watch the webinars, if you've watched and if you plan to watch, Pauline was one of the guests on the webinar with Dr. Mapp, the Voices from the Field. And she heard us talk about what are the big 3, and she made these posters for each of her grades in her school, which I think are like fabulous. The teachers came together and they worked on these, and these are all around the school. And so you can see what they came up with, and then the work that they then do with families in terms of, math nights or reading nights or strategies that they send home in their newsletter or put on social media. They all link back to this. And I know I'm going late, sorry. So more ideas around this, data chats, how to help families connect and find the data and how to read it. Video tutorials. So again, where to find the information on Infinite Campus, or how to access Google Classroom. And so if they can't attend a live session, something recorded, and then family learning labs. So even just open sessions for families. And again, wording is important. So putting that information up. I love this slide. This came from a district, a middle school I'm working with, but the student helped fill it out, but it is so clear where it says my child's score or my current score is this. Again, the student filled it out, which is a 5th grade level. The student's at 6th grade. My goal is to reach this many points, and to reach that grade level, or to reach grade level, I need to get to these many or this many points. I love that the student was involved in this, and this will be part of their family conference. I love that it's clear and it doesn't leave any questions in terms of where the student is performing. Again, a great tool from Learning Heroes in terms of where students are performing and some strategies. So using their benchmark results, and then some strategies so you can find them on the Learning Heroes site. It's all free, and I know we've put the information in the chat. And then the last part is really empowering families. And so I'm hoping that this isn't the first time you've heard of Dr. Karen Mapp, but she is our thought partner at Scholastic. Our goal is always to effectively partner with that the partnership between schools and families is really about improving school and student learning and that student achievement. And I don't just happen.
You can just click got it, and I think it will go away.
What can I click?
Got it over there in the bottom right.
Bottom right.
There you go. Yep,
Oh,
just circled
okay.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know like what happened. The point I wanted to make is that this all relates to the process conditions in terms of really empowering families, that it's not just about telling them, but it's about showing them. And so my next slide, oh no, look, I have closed captions on. This idea that telling isn't teaching. And so being mindful that we don't want to do so much telling, it's really about showing and modeling and opportunities for families to practice. And now this is just some research from Jimmy Kim around providing books to students. So the control group didn't have anything. The first group got books. The second group got books that were on their level. But the last group, we actually, in Jimmy Kim's study, the last group, they modeled and engaged families and provided them with some strategies on how to actually utilize the books. And so again, you can see what happens when it's not just telling, but when it's actually empowering them to use the information or to use the tools in meaningful ways. And so again, some additional ideas, a parent university, families get to choose their session, but again, it's not just about telling, it's about opportunities to learn from each other and practice, a weekly game night, just adults only, but that they're using some tools and materials that they'd find at home. And again, family ambassadors that you train a cadre of families by grade level to mentor and support families. And this, my last slide is that Learning Heroes did some surveys over the course of last year in terms of how they were feeling and what they wanted for this upcoming year. And as you can see, their top answer was that they wanted to get a better understanding of what their child is expected to learn at his or her new grade level. That was at 73%. And more time to talk to their child about assignments, and a better understanding of where my child is academically. So I want to leave you with families are ready. They're ready to be your partner in this work. And families also have a deeper appreciation for the work that you do in their class, in the classroom. And so they are ready, willing, and able to be your partners. So I'm going to stop. I'm so sorry for going long. I thank you for hanging in there with me. I don't know if there are any last minute questions, but I will be sure to send to Sheila and to the team a PDF of my presentation so that you have everything. And I will, just because I know we're already running late, I'm gonna send it off. Oh, so here's my information, just in case you want to stay in touch with me, or if you have other further questions, you can like snap a picture of that. Javon's mom. She's one of my specialists. I'm going to turn it over to Angela, who is the supervisor of family and community engagement under the Climate and Cultural Division at Hillsborough County Public Schools. And she will close us out. Again, thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I apologize for my technical glitches, but again, that's real sometimes, right? So Angela, take it away.
Maybe Angela's having some audio difficulties. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and take over. This is Sheila. Thank you, Jenny, so much. Thank you for your time and your insight, your wonderful information, and all your resources. Thank you to all the attendees on behalf of the Alliance for Family Engagement. We ask that you please take the survey if you're still hanging around, and you can click on that. It's in the chat. Also, we will send the link in the follow-up email tomorrow with all these resources Jenny's mentioned, along with the recording link. We really want to know what your feedback is and what you'd like as we plan for the coming year and then for next year. Who knows where we'll be, but we'd like to think about having a conference again in some way, shape, or form. We have a website that we're building to house all this information. So please visit it frequently. It will change, resources will come and go. We have social media, Facebook and Twitter, and we have a Gmail account in case you want to just be in touch and ask some questions and figure out when the next meeting is that you'd like to join. As Marty said at the beginning, we meet monthly and we welcome anyone's participation. So if you want to hang around for a little bit, we'll be here. I know it's Thursday night. We're all anxious to find out the next chapter in our election adventure.
That is true.
We'll be here for a little bit if you want to hang around, and we thank you so much for.
I will hang around too. It's 2 hours earlier for me here in Arizona, so I'm happy to hang on.
Amy and Abby, can you put the survey link in the chat? People are asking, please. Maybe it's there. They just have to scroll back. In any case, it'll be in the email tomorrow.
I think I got something lopped off, so that's the whole.
Yeah, and thank you, Amy and Abby, for fielding the questions and for the entire team.
Yeah, no, Jenny, was great. And I think one question that I know we all have to go, but I get this a lot from schools is parent and family engagement at the high school level. I think that gets a little trickier. So maybe for another seminar or webinar, it'd be great to address.
Yeah, I tried to put in some of the strategy specific, that I've seen middle schools and stuff using, but I can totally share some of the things for a high school that folks are using. And
yeah, we got a yes, please on that. Yes, please.
Yes. And a lot of times it's really looking at their school improvement plans. And so engaging families around, if graduation is a goal or credit recovery and figuring out those strategies. How to engage families in those conversations, but we can absolutely, yes, attendance, so it's a lot about supporting and monitoring and advocating. But yes, we can absolutely.
What you just said, wrap that up with the bow. Love it.
Sure, we can totally do that.
I think the last thing, Jenny, is somebody just has a question about whether or not they have permission to share all of the information that you shared with everybody today, and including all of our resources. And I see you shaking your head because I know that is the goal of all of this, is to spread the word wide and far.
Yes, absolutely. And you can share when I send the PDF of the presentation, you can feel free to share. So yes, absolutely. It's better to ask, Olga, trust me. Although sometimes I ask for permission after, but yeah, I don't want you to get in trouble. Don't follow my bad habits.
So on a side note, who knew we had closed captioning?
I know. What? I don't even know what I hit. Did I hit something? I'm sure I hit something.
I don't know, but it's amazing.
I know, that's what I said. So you do have that.
Yeah. I didn't know it. I thought it was a coming, to be announced feature in Zoom. So I guess it's been released. So anybody out there using Zoom for their family engagement, this is a huge additional feature. We've had, issues with just making sure that, we're covering everyone's needs. And
we should say this was intentional.
Jenny just launched it for Zoom. She didn't know.
We should say this was intentional. We meant to do that so you could see how we engage all families.
You're modeling as usual.
That's us. That's right.
Us.
All right, I'm so sad about the poll.
I know. I don't know what happened. I was like, oh my God. It sort of just.
Can you see it now?
I can. So I wonder about like the first, so I wanted to have some like discussion about like the first one. And so when they answered that, what I wanted to do was then go and after I went through the, what does it mean to prioritize? When they answered that question, is that what they were thinking as well?
Yeah, I don't know what, I don't know that it was the polling, but I mean, we've done polling before, but
I have no
who
idea.
knows what weird set of circumstances were.
No idea.
But
Yeah.
we recovered.
We did, and that's what happens.
And nobody, we didn't lose anybody at that point. So that was great. Except you, Jenny.
I know. Oops. Was that a question? Did Shelby have, what is?
I don't know. I was going to ask that too. Evidence that it's a priority and not just an assumption.
I think she was looking at her question before that had been about getting your administration and those above you and your teams and things like that to have buy-in. So what's the evidence that you've got buy-in from your leadership?
Oh,
If I got it wrong, let me know.
So what is the evidence? I think that you see the work continuing. I would look for every teacher is on the same page around family engagement, what it looks like. Family engagement in your school improvement plan, it's looked at as a strategy. Teachers meet when they have when they're doing their PLCs, that family engagement is incorporated as a strategy. So when we're looking at tiering our students, there's also this conversation about how we're engaging families into that conversation, and that administrators are looking at more than just attendance around family engagement, but the quality of the relationships and the practices and what we engage families on. I would say it's a priority when administrators say all of us will make, at minimum, one phone call home to every single family. In the district that I'm working with in Iowa, the entire district made it a priority for family conversations. And they originally were going to do them like weekly. And then they were like, oh my God, we can't do that. But that's, I think, what you would see. Is one, I think family engagement is seen as an instructional strategy. And so folks that work in family engagement are invited to the table when the superintendents or cabinet are having discussions, that it's not siloed into one small department. So those, I mean, there are others that I can go on and on and on and on, but those are just a couple, if that helps.